Welcome to Spiritual Steps, a podcast about learning to pray, listen, and grow by taking small steps on the spiritual journey. I'm your host, Stephen Hovatter, and this is episode 2, Prayer and Rest. And in this episode, I want to encourage you to enhance your prayer life by making sure that you are getting enough rest. Now, that may seem like a strange advice, like a strange place to start from in talking about prayer, but the truth is that if you are consistently exhausted, you will find it difficult to grow in your life of prayer. Prayer is an activity of attention. And like all activities of attention, you'll find that your body and mind cannot engage fully in the moment of prayer if you have denied them the rest they need to function well. In fact, of all the different small steps that we might think of in terms of training ourselves to be people of prayer, rest is such a critical factor that it can act as a gatekeeper in our entry into the life of prayer, as a condition of our sustained development, or it can act as a ceiling for how far we might develop. Our current struggles with prayer in just our culture, our world, in the church, are partly due to our lack of practice and training and other factors, but they're certainly compounded by the insidious combination of distraction and fatigue. We are so used to bouncing from activity to activity so quickly, and we feel so much compulsion to do more, to consume more, to not stop, that we have a hard time holding up our hands and saying, this is enough for the day. I choose to rest now. It is so hard in our life, even though it's a life of great leisure and luxury, it is so hard for us to truly rest. Maybe the line in the Lord's Prayer that says, "Give us this day our daily bread," can come to be of some helpful instruction here and remind us to not only be content to receive from the Lord what we need for the day, but also to think of what we give of ourselves in that kind of contained daily sense as well, so that we can come to each evening and come to a place of peace that says, I have given myself to this day, and now I'm done with it. So we can then peacefully embrace the work of the night, which is to prepare ourselves for the next day by resting well. Rest is not something that gets in the way of our productivity. It's not an obstacle, a task, a chore, but it's a provision. It is a grace that, among other things that sustain our lives like food and shelter and friendship, it's a grace that helps us be prepared to fully embrace not just our life with God, but our life with all of humanity. In other words, it calls us to engage in the mission of God in a different way. So we would say, give us this day our daily bread for sure, and we might say, give us today good, fulfilling work. But at the close of the day, we also might well pray, give us today, give us this night our daily rest. Now, you may have seasons, or more truthfully, we should say that you will have seasons in your life where rest is more elusive. I mean, believe me, I'm a dad who has 4 kids who are 8 and under. I get it. Rest can be hard to come by sometimes. So there'll be times when, in your life too, when various responsibilities that you have or external pressures make it difficult and sometimes impossible maybe to get the rest that you need. I assure you that you can find psalms that validate and voice the burden of those kinds of moments, that speak of the psalmist feeling pursued and fatigued. In those moments, I want to offer 2 different thoughts. First, you must demand of yourself that restlessness be confined to those moments. You cannot allow what is acute to become chronic. You can't allow what you're experiencing in a particular moment to come to define you as the norm. If it is in danger of becoming a long-term condition, then you must You have to, no matter how difficult, you have to find the courage and resolve to restructure your life so that you can have the rest that you need to function well. And if you can't do that over the long haul, you simply will not be able to well attend to the important things of life. But you can do it. Now, you might have to make hard choices, some countercultural choices, some very radical choices, but you can do it. You have to perceive that over the long haul of your life, building a life that is capable of having moments of recharge and rest is, first of all, a choice that you have power over. And then secondly, it's an important choice to make. It's the kind of fuel that you need to go on in your life. Now, hardly any of us would think about just driving a car on empty for the duration that we possess the car, but how many people think that they are going to be able to go through their lives driving completely on empty the entirety of each day, never stopping to refuel and to recharge? You have to have rest. You can have rest, and you need to make that kind of choice. Now, second, if you're in a season of rest deprivation, then I think it's important for you, even in those seasons, even in those acute moments where it's hard and it's difficult, you need to try to create for yourself margin moments. Okay, now what I mean by that is a small ritual in which you pause to just be at rest. Now, even if that snatch of peace is only 5, 10, 15 minutes long, now you can do that. Okay, don't give me a line that says you can't take 5 minutes to be still in any given day. All right, so as you do that, what you want to do is you want to acknowledge that even though you're at a deficit, that even though this isn't the norm for how you're living your life, that you're this place where you need to rest, you want to stop, be still, be quiet, and pause for long enough. You can say gratefully thank you for that moment, kind of like we talked about in last week's episode 1, or whatever, but just collect yourself and be still. Now, it's possible in that moment to use this desire for rest that you have, the fatigue, as a tool for focusing yourself in a small moment of rest-oriented prayer, and be able to let that point towards your reliance on the Lord, okay? And then take that small moment, which is a resting prayer, okay, where you're just existing and waiting and acknowledging God's presence, but also just stopping and pausing. Okay. Now, try to receive that kind of a moment as what it is. It's a small grace, a small bit of provision that you're claiming. And then go on as best you can until you can manage to re-enter into a routine that has the sort of structure that enables you to rest well and thus to live well. You can use those kind of small moments as small steps, okay, to deepen the way that you think about how you trust the Lord and you rely on the Lord. However, even when you do that, you still have to do so with the conviction that that cannot become the long-time norm for your life. That's not how the Creator designed you to thrive. So, before I finish, I want to come back to what brought us here in the first place. This isn't just about, being happy and living well and being productive. That this subject of this podcast isn't just rest for rest's sake, but it's as a condition of prayer. Rest is not unrelated to prayer. It's not even merely tangential to it, but it is fundamentally related. If you want to build a life of prayer, then you must commit to consistently resting well. I'm going to take it from me. Times when I failed to do this, when I was struggling to get the rest I need, when I was pushing myself way past the limits for too long of a period of time, okay? When I was letting, the structure of my life be so crowded that I wasn't getting the rest that I needed. When I do that, my prayer life seems like it just hits a brick wall, okay? Because I don't have the capacity for attention that prayer requires. But when I rest well, I can pray well. Okay? When I rest well, then I can give my attention to that moment of prayer with the Lord. Now, I bet that you'll find that to be true for you too. So if you want to have a renewed prayer life tomorrow, then begin with the small step of getting enough rest tonight. That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening. You can catch up with me on Twitter with the handle @StephenHovatter, which is linked in the show notes. I'd love for you to share this episode with your friends. I bet there's somebody out there who could use the encouragement in the spiritual journey. And also, please remember to subscribe in the podcast, your podcast app of choice, whether it's iTunes or Overcast or Stitcher or Podbean or whatever. And we'll be back with a new episode next week. Until then, keep taking the next step that you see in front of you, and may God be with you on each step of your journey. Peace.